The unfortunate news of Joe Burrow being out potentially for the season is true. Thoughts on Joe reacting to the news, what Zac Taylor had to say, the Bengals player taking blame for the injury, and much, much more right now on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Hi again, everyone, and welcome into CBT. I'm James Rapien of BengalsTalk.com. Today's show is brought to you by WinWinAthletics.com. Check them out. WinWinAthletics.com for the best flag football gear in the world. Let's dive into a really unfortunate day here at Paycor Stadium where Zac Taylor stopped short of saying that Joe Burrow would be out for the season. Zac Taylor didn't want to give any timeline when it came to a Joe Burrow recovery, but it's very, very clear a couple of things. One, Joe Burrow needs surgery, and two, any internet doctor that you look at, any NFL person that you talk to, he's going to miss extended time and potentially the entire 2025 season. There's no surgery date set for Joe Burrow yet. Part of that is they have to wait on a few different things from I think a healing perspective to evaluate it. Then he'll undergo surgery, and then the recovery process is going to start. But this is a very serious turf toe injury, grade 3 injury, and something that, like I said, could end Joe Burrow's season. And if that does happen, we're talking about 3 times in 6 years that Joe Burrow's season has ended like this, with a surgery. And so that is going to be a topic that is certainly going to be discussed. Zac Taylor talked about it some, obviously discussed the fact that it's a huge loss losing Joe Burrow, expressed a ton of confidence in Jake Browning and what Jake did a few years ago, obviously, what Jake did the other day for Jacksonville against Jacksonville, At the same time, we can't overstate how important Joe Burrow is. Can't overstate how important he is to everything in this building that I'm in right now. And so for this to happen, we got some player reactions. Dalton Risner discussing just how much blame he takes for that play. And he got beat by Eric Armstead on that play. Eric Armstead's the one that tackled Joe. Obviously, no one would have thought that his toe gets caught the way it did, and it gets caught under him. All that force is put on it, and he suffers the torn ligaments in his toe that he suffered. But it's unfortunate all around. Make sure you check out what Dalton Risner had to say about the injury, about his reaction, about that play. And I didn't even ask him about the play. I asked him about the news, and he went out of his way to say that. So I think it's a very somber day here at Paycor Stadium. I also believe that from Zac Taylor to the offensive lineman that I talked to Andre Yosevash, who I also talked to, that video and audio is up. Any of these guys, they're going to tell you that they're confident in Jake Browning, that they're confident in this team moving forward. And we're going to have time for that, for sure, to talk about how this offense looks, what it's going to look like, how this Bengals team can maybe keep this going, because they are 2-0. It feels like they're 0-2, but they are 2-0. So plenty to discuss when it comes to that. But overall, it's just a brutal, brutal day, brutal news that we obviously had Sunday night that me and Andrew went back and forth, and I was like, look, I think this is the news. Like, we need to roll with it now. And obviously by Monday morning, you found out, whether it was BengalsTalk.com, whether it was on our channel here or on our podcast platforms, that this is going to be not a couple weeks type thing. This is a long haul type thing. So Zac Taylor stopped short of saying that Joe Burrow is going to be on injured reserve. Guess what? He's going to go on injured reserve at some point and probably miss the majority of the 2025 season, if not all of the season. Up next, let's discuss a little bit more of the reaction here at Paycor Stadium, the potential timeline for Joe, what I'm hearing. I've paid attention to Dr. David Chow and others that have been NFL doctors that have done this at a high level. So plenty to dive into here when it comes to Joe's possible return, if he could return, and how realistic that is. We'll get to that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by WinWin Athletics. Check them out, winwinathletics.com, for the best flag football gear on the planet. And look, it's a tough day for the Bengals. It's a tough day here at Paycor Stadium. But you know what's going to make your day less tough? Awesome flags in flag football that are easy to put back on, that are easy to pull and easy to operate. Anyone that's played flag football knows how painful it is when you have flags that don't work. Get the high quality equipment that is WinWin Athletics by getting the WinWin Athletics flag football kit at winwinathletics.com. All right, let's dive into more of the reaction here at Paycor Stadium, because I think it's a couple of things. One, Zac Taylor was like, it doesn't feel like we're 2-0. And honestly, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. I was thinking today, I was like, you know what? All that talk about starting fast, and this is how you start the slowest. There's no slower start. I would trade a healthy Joe for 0-3 like last year. Much more than this situation. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe in that Jake Browning can keep them afloat for a bit, but that's not the point. The point is when you talk about Super Bowls and you're talking about championships and you talk about championship windows and you talk about delivering a Lombardi to Cincinnati, well, we all know how important Joe is to that. And so without that, we're kind of like, So as far as the timeline goes, well, I think a couple of things. One, you're seeing a minimum of 3 months. The key word there is minimum. I think there are a lot of people that would expect him out until the playoffs minimum. And so you're talking not December 14th, but January 14th. It doesn't mean he couldn't return, but certainly much tougher to go from not playing at all to a playoff game potentially in that scenario. So that's possible. It could happen. I'm not going to be thinking about it that way. I'm not. And that doesn't mean he doesn't come back. That doesn't mean he can't come back. That doesn't mean they won't find the right treatment. I remember, and I'll refer to this. I referenced it yesterday. I'll continue to reference it. When he tweaked his calf against Baltimore after having hurt it 5 weeks prior, it was like, oh, man, he's going to miss time, like real time with this injury. And he played the next week. They got through that. He played the next week. He wasn't moving well, but they won a game here, prime time against the Rams. I think it was 19-16, and he threw the ball, and it was statue Joe. He was not moving, but he was out there. And the next week they get blown out by Tennessee, and then I believe they went to Arizona, won big, and then they were off and running and looked like themselves, and he kind of overcame that a bit. And so we've seen that before where it's like, oh, well, this is the timeline, and then he either plays through it, which is not the case here, but with the calf was, or comes back earlier, which I do think you can't dismiss at this point. Not saying it'll happen, can't dismiss it. I would have it in the back of your mind, but it's not like we're going to be like, all right, well, is Joe going to be back by week 8 or week 10 or week 12? Like, it's probably unrealistic to see him in a football uniform at any point during this calendar year. And so I think that's where it's at. I would only be honest with you because that's, well, what you deserve. And it's really, really unfortunate, especially after just the second game of the season. But this Bengals team, they still are confident. Make sure you check out what Andre Yosevach said, what Dalton Reisner said here on the channel. Make sure you check out all of our post-game coverage as well. And that included Jake Browning. That included Zac Taylor. That included multiple members of the team, including Jamar Chase and Ted Karras. And then today, the Reisner Yosevach is a must. And then what Zac Taylor had to say, I think, was a must because he was clear, yet stopped short of saying anything else outside of Joe Burrow needs surgery. Look, he's going to be out for quite some time, but we'll see. Don't completely slam the door on him returning this season, even though I think that it's pretty unlikely. We're going to have you covered every step of the way. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And if you're looking for more on the Bengals, check out our website, bengalstalk.com. Until next time, for Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much, and we're signing off from now here at Paycor Stadium on Cincinnati Bengals Talk.